Welcome everybody to the Most Important Conversations. I'm Chad Lefevre, and I've got September Dorhmann here with me as usual. September, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Had a wonderful meditation this morning. I had the awareness of when I'm being present from the inside of me, or when I'm being present externally. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like we've talked about before in the Whole Life Architecture program and some of the work about TMIC, I've referenced Ram Dass's metaphor where he says we're all wearing like a spacesuit, and we
Yes.
all identify with the spacesuit versus identifying with who we really are. So in other words, who's in the spacesuit and who's operating the spacesuit, right? And so
Yeah.
tell me more about your experience. So you started to have an experience in meditation where you felt you were in the spacesuit or outside looking and observing the spacesuit?
Well, I became aware of the contrast between the two. So I felt myself when my energy's outside my body. And then I felt myself and spent a lot of time with being on the inside, feeling my energy on the inside. It's like the me of me, the one that's doing the thinking, that's behind the thinking, the light being is what Bernie used to call that part of us. We're orbs of light when we get to the other side. That's what he used to say. And I really don't have a way of explaining what that is, because the fact is I don't know for sure what happens when we leave this body or leave this dimension. But it was really interesting because when I was sitting in the space of having my energy from within, I also had the awareness that I really love to connect with source energy when I'm in meditation, and I normally do it outside, right? So I'm connecting outside with source energy, but this time I chose to connect with source energy from the inside. And what that felt like to me is, and we read it in a lot of religion texts, that you are an expression of God. You are God energy. You're just the September Dorhmann expression of that energy, or the Chad Lefevre expression of the same energy, source energy. And I was feeling into that and sitting with how unlimited that energy is. And when I sat in that space, I became aware of my bodysuit limitations, the mind limitations. Like, wow, source energy is so unlimited. There's no boundaries around it. But when we look at it through our human bodysuit lens, there's so many different boundaries that we put around our belief system, what we believe is possible and who we are. And we really limit ourselves. I mean, that was a huge awareness this morning, was the limitation that I've placed on myself by not living from the place of source energy.
Yeah.
And it ties into being present to the now, to this moment right here.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, that's a super cool experience. Is that the first time you've had that sort of awareness?
This is the deepest I've gone with the awareness. I really sat into that space. I almost felt disconnected from my body. I was so into my me of me, into that energy of me, the consciousness of me. I've had some pretty wild experiences in meditation, profound awarenesses. Like,
well, listen, first of all, meditation is meditation is one of these sort of peak flow experiences that we can drop into. Now, just so everyone knows who's watching or listening, so I'm coming to you today from Bali, Indonesia, which is where I am for the next couple of months. And what we've been doing since we've been here is really it's a very mystical place. And there's a lot like mystical in the sense of you walk down the street, and anyone who's been here knows this. But you walk down the street and they're burning incense and flowers literally on the sidewalk. You have to walk over the incense and the flowers that are burning on the sidewalk, and it's every so many meters or whatever. It's you think of sort of storefronts, and then in front of the storefronts they'll have this little pile of burning
Mm-hmm.
flowers and incense. So, and then there's temples everywhere, and we've been doing yoga every night, yoga and meditation every night before bed. It's only, I bring that up only because there are places you can go in the world that make it easier for you to drop into the experience that you're talking about. But any type of meditation, if you do it long enough, and this is the thing that I find interesting, is that you said that this is the deepest you've ever felt it. And what have we been doing for the last 6 months is consistent daily meditation, right? And so it opens you up to the energy within, as opposed to focusing on the energy without. And what the experience you're describing has been, like you mentioned, written about in various ways through a number of spiritual and religious and even philosophical texts throughout history. So that's a profound experience. And the thing that always gets written about is that we are not the spacesuit. We are not the body. And yet, so many of us in our life relate to all of life and our relationship and experience to it as the body is who I am. But no, who is in the body observing the body? See, this is the thing to get. You wouldn't know you had a body if you were just the body. Like the fish in the fishbowl. If you went to the fish and you said, "How's the water today?" And the fish has become so identified with the water that it says, "What water?" Like it's just all encompassing. It's what it's swimming in now, right? And so we end up, our actual being ends up swimming in the water of our body, and we start to conflate and confuse that we are the body. Now the body is an access point to the self. So the body's not unimportant, but it's not who we are. And so the ego, the proclivity of human beings to identify with their ego, which is their identity. We talk about this in emotional sobriety, that one of the issues in the world today is exactly what you're talking about, and what you had the experience of disassociating with. You disassociated in meditation with the body and became the observer of the body, right? So I just want to go back to what I said a minute ago. You would not know you had a body if you were the body. So there's your evidence that you're not your body, because you're observing the body. Well, who is the observer?
Yes, that. And last night you and I were talking about time and the vagus nerve and how all that ties in together. And I recalled that conversation in meditation because I was so relaxed, so calm. And when I looked at the various situations that are going on in my life, there was zero emotion connect to it. But that's being inside and being present to the now. I mean, you're only in the moment. You're not projecting anything.
Yeah.
And in work, we're projecting, we're outside, we're processing something, we're thinking about this, we're organizing that, we're making sense of this here, we're writing copy here. It's all external to some degree. And I think there is, however, the flow state. When you're in flow and you just completely lose your sense of time and completely lose sense of your body bag, really, your bodysuit. Yeah. You lose touch with, and you're just in this state of flow. You're in a flow of consciousness, a flow of energy. It's still kind of new that this experience is new. So I'm still processing what it all means. And does it mean anything? Should I not be interpreting? Am I overthinking it?
Well, interestingly enough, it means nothing.
Right.
So because associating and attaching meaning to things is also a body-based, outer focused way of living.
That's true.
Right. I love it. Ram Dass's film that they made before he passed away, it's on iTunes if anyone wants to watch it. It's called Becoming Nobody. becoming no body.
No body.
But nobody is how it's spelt. They combine the words, but break it up. Becoming no body. You are somebody, you are a body, or you are no body. Meaning, what are you identifying with? Right?
Yes, yes. And there was a sense of feeling like everything and nothing all at once. It was blissful, actually. And I just wanted to stay there all day. It felt so lovely to be, and suspended is what it felt like, energetically suspended.
Yeah, well, it's you were experiencing your authentic self. Now, Ramana Maharshi talks about the self as being the authentic you, and like you said, that it says in all of these different spiritual texts throughout the world that depending on the religious tradition or spiritual tradition you believe, it'll say something like, we are God, or it'll say something like in the Christian Bible, God made man in his image, which is just a metaphorical way of saying that God, spirit, God's energy is in us. Well, of course, because the creator, the universe, God, whatever you want to call that force, consciousness, whatever, it goes by many different names, is in all living things because it is the creator of all things. So God is in us, with us. We move with God, but it's not the anthropomorphic sort of man in the sky on a throne, I don't believe, that is sort of external to us. Because consider this, for something to be external to us, you have to be a somebody, because if you're a body, the way you relate to the world is there's me, my body, and there's what's not me, not my body. So my relationship is my body to what's not my body. That other people are not my body. The nature is not my body. Anything that's a phenomenological experience outside of the self, which Ramana Maharshi calls the essence of who you authentically are, the self, versus, he says, the I, which the I would be the ego in sort of Freud's language, right? So it gets confusing sometimes for people but the concept's the same because we use different words. So Freud might call the ego that sort of personified, identified thing that we relate to as identity. Ramana Maharshi would call it the I, and so on and so forth, right? There's different words for the same principle and the same concept. So, I'm trying to get to the heart of the principle here, which is that you're either living from the world within or the world without. Most of us are living with the world without. When we're living from the world without, we are identified with the body. So we are somebody. When Ram Dass said, become no body, he actually meant have no identification with the body. Well, what does that really mean? It means don't identify with your phenomenological experience, phenomenon. Don't identify with what you taste, smell, see, hear, touch. Not that those things are unimportant. See, it's almost like we're a consciousness or a soul or an entity that has been given this spacesuit, this machine. Have you ever seen those movies? I think one was called Pacific Rim. And the human beings got inside these massive robot things that they could control and had legs and arms, and they could walk into the Pacific Ocean, and it was like about a war or something. I can't remember the plot anymore. But basically, they would get inside of these things and drive them. Now, that's what's going on with us. It's like our soul has got inside this body and is sitting in the driver's seat. But what happens is, pulling all the levers and,
I'm picturing it. I'm totally picturing it.
But what happens is we from a very young age, we're told over and over and over again that people aren't relating to the self or the I, they're relating to the machine we're driving. And so they're lauding the machine, they're congratulating the machine, they're telling the machine how to behave, And so eventually, and this is no different, I was reading a story yesterday about a man somewhere in the United States, I can't remember which state. He was just released from prison, He was in prison for 20 years for a crime, a murder that he didn't commit. And they found that he actually didn't commit the murder. But here's the thing. He was in prison because he confessed to the murder. And when they went back and they watched the tapes of the police and stuff who were interrogating him around the time of the murder, they found that he was so heavily accosted, not physically, but in terms of the accusations. This is what the mind will do to remove the pain of the situation. He was able to convince himself, listening to these other people, well, I must have done it. And I remember sitting there last night thinking, if I didn't murder someone, this is what I'm thinking, you could never convince me I did it. Like, how could you convince me that I murdered someone?
Totally agree.
Like, this is what's going through my mind. But then I have a moment of humility and I ask myself, well, this man is no better than me. Something in that experience caused him to release his experience of reality and adopt another's as his own. In this case, the projected narrative that the police were telling him. And he thought, well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I did kill that person. And so he ended up confessing. Now, why would the brain do that? In order to remove him from the pain of the interrogation, which obviously got so immense and intense that it was worth it to him to go to prison than continue to be in that moment. Now, this is how plastic the brain is. I want everyone to just think about this. If you didn't murder someone and you could be convinced that you did, you could be convinced of anything. So from a very young age, we have been told, you are the body. You are the body. This is all that matters. The body, the body, the body, the world without, the phenomenological world without. This is reality. This is what matters. Forget everything you know. Forget who you think you are. You have to go to school. You have to get a job. You have to pay the bills, and then you die. And the tax man takes it all, and that's it. This is what this life is about. That's it. You've been told that. It's been modeled to us. It's been told to us. It's been reinforced to us. It's been incentivized to us. We are led down this path of, look at all the, and I'm not making money or living a good, wealthy, abundant life wrong. But when we identify with that as the reason for our existence and are willing to do anything to get it, because we're so desperate, because we've been convinced that we are the body and that this thing must be preserved at all costs, even admitting to committing a murder I didn't do, that's what we're dealing with here in the head. The machine has taken over. Pink Floyd wrote a song in 1977, I think it was, from the album Wish You Were Here, called Welcome to the Machine. Now, it's a metaphor. You could think of it as the machine of society. You could think of it as the machine of our mind. You could think of it as the machine of the body. But the point is, it's a machine that's controlling you, not you. Well, who is the you? Who is the self? Who is the I? We have a mental health crisis happening in the country and bubbling up around the world because we have mind-fucked ourselves, quite frankly, to believe that the only thing that matters is the world without, the body, winning at the game. Right now, with the social media craze that's been going on for 14, 15 years now, it's all an outer world projection, right? It's like, look at me, look at me, look at me. But they're not seeing you. They're seeing the body, they're seeing the life, they're seeing this artificial construction that you've created, but it's not you. I could keep going on, but I mean, this is what we're talking about. And so when you were in meditation, and like I was sharing with you when I was in meditation the other night, I was in this pose that is intentionally designed to stimulate the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve turns on the parasympathetic nervous system and allows us to relax, okay? And so I was in a pose that triggered that. There are many poses in yoga that can do that. And I was in it, and I was doing a yin practice. Yin is the feminine energy in the yoga language. Yang is the masculine or more active energy in the yoga language. So I was in a yin or feminine practice which is about going into and deepening into postures and holding those postures for a time and not reacting to the muscle that'll spasm. And oftentimes it's uncomfortable and can be painful, but you press in and you breathe through the discomfort and you settle into the discomfort and you accept. It's about accepting. See, the feminine is all about accepting, receiving, being with. This is why we need to make a shift in the world right now towards a more feminine way of being. Because if the yang energy of society, which is the more masculine, not making masculinity wrong, but too much of one thing out of balance is never a good thing. And we have developed a world over many years now, decades, millennia, where the masculine energy has been the dominating energy. And so, but what's happened is that's created a world that we can't accept. We can't be with it. Mental health crisis, health, dis-ease, all of this stuff starts to bubble up. And so I was in that practice, in the yin practice, laying back, stimulating the vagus nerve, and it was supposed to be for 10 minutes. I'm laying there. I feel like perceptually only a minute has gone by. And then the yoga teacher says, okay, it's time to come out of the pose. That means 10 minutes went by. I thought I just started. So even our perception of time is connected to the body. When we extricate ourselves from the body, when we're no longer body-centric, basically, I'm not saying we necessarily leave the body, like in some kind of astral traveling thing or something. Some people believe that's true. I don't know. It's never happened to me. But so I'm not saying we leave the body, but our perception of time gets skewed. And so, because time, the way we relate to time is also body-centric, or it doesn't have to be. Remember when you were a child and it seemed like summer would go forever?
Yes.
It seemed like it would go forever, right? It's the same amount of time. Now it seems like it just goes like this. Life goes like this the older you get, right? It's actually, time isn't speeding up, it's perception. It's the only thing that's shifted.
Well, we also
covered a lot of ground.
Yes, and we talked about how in that relaxed state that it affects time. And we hear the saying, time flies when you're having fun, but you're in a relaxed state. And same thing with meditation, being in a relaxed state. It's like a time bending superpower.
Yeah.
I had to go pick up somebody from the bus station, I guess it was a bus station. I had to pick up somebody. The traffic was horrible in Tampa. And we had to get him there by time. And there was no way. I mean, looking at the interstate, pulling up GPS, showing us how the delays were. There were an accident. There was construction. It was horrible. And I asked him, and his name is Jacques. I said, Jacques, do you know how to time bend? He's like, absolutely, I do. We got there 30 minutes before he had to be there. But when I can say that anytime I've needed to be somewhere on time and I was so stressed out about it, I would just tell myself, just relax. You'll get there at the right and perfect time. Just relax, relax. And it's the state of relaxation around time that seems to bend time. And I think when you were talking about the vagus nerve and how it really kind of interferes with that, being in a relaxed state, we have no concept of time in that space. And so what are your thoughts on time bending?
Well, I think what we call time bending, so time is time. And our way that we relate to time is, if anyone's seen that phenomenal movie Interstellar, it does a great job of articulating how time works. Time is, not constant. It's relative. We know this. Time is relative. But as far as you could be around a black hole, and time is going to do something very different there than it will on planet Earth, or wherever, if you travel in the universe. In the movie, he went to another planet, and because of the way time worked on that planet, they said, well, if we go down to the planet, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, it's a phenomenal movie, my favorite movie of all time, still to this day. Anyway, he goes down to this planet and they have to pick up a crew that's down there. And they said, well, and the whole narrative of the story is Matthew McConaughey's trying to get back. They're trying to find an alternative to Earth. And the families are still on Earth, hoping, praying, waiting, and that they find an alternative and that they find a way to transport humanity to another planet so humanity could survive. And so anyway, he's part of the ship. He goes out there and they go to this one planet that another ship had gone to and they lost contact with, who's also searching for an Earth 2. And they lost contact, so they went to try to go rescue them. And he had this conundrum because they said, if you go down to this planet, even if we're there 10 minutes, 20 years of your life will go by on Earth time, or 20 years on Earth time will go by, rather. Only 10 minutes in his lifespan will go by, but 20 years on Earth time will go by. And he thought to himself, oh my gosh, like my daughter's going to be 20 years older when I'm down there only 10 minutes. What do I do? Do I go down and save these people? You know, like these conundrums. So time is relative. We know that from Einstein's theory and the other work that's been done in that space. So time bending, I don't know if it's that we bend time or if it's that we can alter our perception of time and therefore alter our experience of time. You know, I'm not going to say one way or another because what I know about this life is everything we thought was impossible always seems to show up as possible at some point. So it's maybe a different conversation and exploration. But what I do know is that we can alter time. So like our experience of time. So when I was in the yoga pose, 10 minutes had gone by. My perception was 1 minute had gone by. Right? Yes. So that on that same scale, if I perceive 1 year having gone by, if I could be in that relaxed of a state, yet 10 years could have gone by. You know, you could just magnify it out. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. How we perceive time. And it's more about how we're experiencing time. So my example where I had to take Jacques to the bus station by a certain time, I thought for sure, and even GPS showed that we would be 15 minutes late, which means he's going to miss whatever departure time. But we had no choice. We had to try. We had to try to make it. My son's high school graduation, we thought it was 6 p.m. It was 6 a.m. And we wake up at like 6 o'clock with Daniel, my oldest son, screaming in the house, graduation has started. Graduation has started. Now we're up in Tarpon Springs. Graduation was down in St. Pete. And it was during rush hour traffic. 6 o'clock. We all just get up and leave. Daniel says, there's no way. We're not going to make it. We're not going to make it. I said, Daniel, you have to just try. Even if you don't make it, you got to put in the effort because anything could happen. We got there at the perfect time. They were just starting to call the students. They had all the announcements and all the speeches and all the stuff took place. And we got there right on time for him to sit there and be called in line at the right and perfect timing. And I think about that, how from one angle, seems so bizarre that we would make it down to St. Pete in morning rush hour traffic, which is a good hour and 15 minutes away from Tarpon Springs at that time. Traffic at that time when traffic was, it's how long it took us to get down to St. Pete, even an hour and a half. But we got there and I don't even know what time. I didn't even look at the time. All that mattered is that we were there at the right and perfect time. And that is also one of those experiences that's really difficult to explain looking back. How did that happen?
Well, I think you know the answer because we teach it in whole life architecture. And what you're talking about is the power of intention. And remember, whatever you believe, you're right. Because whatever we believe, we will find evidence for in our experience. What the world is grappling right now, especially in the post-COVID period and everything that's gone down, is there is a argument in the social media sphere, in the information sphere, etc., about different perceptions of reality going on. That's really what this is. And it comes from ego, because whenever you're arguing, you're coming from ego anyway, right? Identity, it's preserving. The spacesuit, coming back to where we started today. Spacesuits are arguing because your true self, our true self, is out of time. It doesn't exist in that construct, right? That construct, we relate to our suits, our body suits relate to time because our body suits have an expiry date. They will die.
Yes.
So the bodysuit has an expiry date. So if you're living from the world without, you are hyper attentive to the expiry date of your body. And that doesn't mean don't take care of your spacesuit. Keep it clean, wash it, fix the helmet when it, things like that.
Feed it the right stuff, exercise it.
Yeah, take care of it. It's the temple of your soul, in a sense. We're driving around in this thing. But anyway, coming back to your story, and because all of this mashes up, we could do podcasts on 10 different things from what we've talked about, just drilling in on any of this. And we do drill into all of this stuff in the whole life architecture world, so that you who are listening and watching can re-architect your life by design instead of living and tolerating a life by default, which all of us have done and will continue to do until we make a different choice. But the world right now is in an argument about facts. So-called facts. Whatever you believe, though, you're right about. So facts are basically a social construction, a thing we agree to agree on. There have been many facts throughout human history that have been proven wrong. So they weren't facts. If they were truly a fact, you couldn't prove it wrong because it's a fact, right? So really, there's nothing that's actually a fact, because everything is going to find, at the very least, nuance, or at most be found to be completely opposite. And yet the other thing I can say is that anything you believe is a fact, I can show you a situation that has occurred somewhere in the world, either in this time or another time, where the exact opposite has also been true. And so this is why when we teach in paradigms and paradox, and this is where the paradigms and paradox conversation comes in. We're always in a paradigm, which is a world view, a belief system. We're always in one. The question is, have you designed it, or are you just reacting to one you found yourself in? Right? So the paradigms and paradox conversation comes into here. Intentionality comes in here. So your intention was to get to your son's graduation, and you believed it was possible. Therefore, your perception of what was required was so altered, and you made it so. I'll give you an example from my own life that's similar to yours. I was in LA. This is going back almost 14 years now. 14 years? Anyway, 12 years, something like that. My daughter's birthday. I never missed my daughter's birthday. And I wasn't intending to miss my daughter's birthday. So a friend's driving me to the airport. I'm leaving that day. I have to fly back home and to where she was living. And we get stuck on the 405, which, as everyone knows, that's a beast. And I said, okay, well, let's take one of the side roads. So we took one of the side roads. We went to Lincoln Boulevard, and Lincoln is usually not that bad. Like it's busy, but not like the 405. And so we're driving up Lincoln, and it just so happens there's a ton of construction, and it's all crunched to one lane, and it's worse than the 405. And I was only in normal traffic, I was 20 minutes from the airport. It took us about an hour and a half to get to the airport. That made me so late for my plane that by the time we arrived at LAX, my flight was leaving in 20 minutes. Now, anyone who's traveled since 9/11 knows that if you're not there at a minimum, checked in, bags, everything, at a minimum, usually like 30, 45 minutes before the flight, because you got to go through security and they got to get the bags to the plane, all this stuff. You're not getting on that plane. It's just not going to happen. My intention was to not miss my daughter's birthday party. And I just centered myself in the car and I said, I will get on that plane. I will get on that plane today. And I didn't know how, but here's how this works. When you determine you're going to make something happen, everything starts to shift. It doesn't mean, it's not magic, but when your brain is like, okay, we're doing this, your brain shifts gears and starts thinking, okay, how can I make this work? How can I make this happen? See, when you're saying it's never going to work, or when you're saying I'm not going to make it, your brain starts finding evidence for it to be the case. Because whatever you believe, you're right. And the brain, the ego, identity always needs to be right. It's a security thing. You know, if we feel like our belief and the reality is out of alignment, that causes immense stress because it's seen as a security risk for the brain. Oh my gosh, there's something happening I can't control. There's something happening I can't predict. Now we feel stressed. The cortisol levels start riding, all of this stuff. So consider that our stress is 100% perceptual, created by perception, right? So
Yes.
your son had stress. He wasn't going to make it. You had no stress, we're going to make it. Perception, same car, same location, leaving at the same time, two different experiences. So I'm in the car going to LAX. My friend lets me get out when I get there, and I determined I was getting on that plane. I walked in, I walked right up to the woman at the counter, and she greeted me with a smile before she even got to go into the, can I get your whatever, you know, your ticket and all this stuff. I said, listen, I know I'm late for my plane. I know you're not supposed to let me on that plane. But here's what I also know. It's my daughter's birthday today. I've never missed it. And I know you have the power to make sure I don't miss her birthday party. I said, so what can we do? Mm. And she said, give me a second. She starts clicking away, typing, talks to someone, comes back. Okay, sir, I'm going to walk you through security. We're going to walk your bags onto the plane, and you're going to make the flight. Post 9/11 awesome. World. Yeah. What was different? Only thing was different is I didn't accept the reality that I couldn't get on the plane.
Mm. Yes. Yeah. Oh, so yes.
Right? You were accepting the reality that you were not going to make
that boy is going to graduate. Yeah. I'm not going to let him miss his graduation. He is getting to graduation.
Yeah.
I'm so determined.
That's it. And you had emotion behind it. You had purpose, you had intentionality.
Well, I had a knowing that it would happen. Didn't know how, but there was almost a knowing in there. It's going to happen. But
that's because you decided it.
Yes.
That's because you decided it. I decided I was making the birthday party. You decided you were making the graduation. Mm-hmm. So everyone who's listening and watching, consider how often you accept what you consider to be inevitable. But if you actually could develop that sense of knowing, that self-trust, and do the work to alter your perception of what's possible, how much more rich would your life actually be?
And how less fatiguing it would be. Going back to where I started in meditation, when I would feel my energy outside my body, feel my energy inside my body, feel my energy outside my body, feel it inside. And I would do this back and forth. And I'm like, what's the contrast? What's different here? Outside, it's like, wow, it kind of feels fatiguing, a little staticky. When I'm inside, it's so calm and relaxing and peaceful and certain. And even though there's all kinds of uncertainty, there's still a level of certainty. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no matter what, I'm okay. And it's not a mental game. It was a fact for me in being inside my body and being in the moment.
Yeah, it has to come from within too.
Yes, right? It's within.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And so that's where the development of self-trust, and we deal with all this stuff in the whole life architecture program. As you move through, you start to realize that, listen, if we are accepting our life as it is, and we just are like, and I don't mean accept there are things to accept and there are things not to accept. So things will happen that are outside of our control in life. And the only thing we can do in those moments is relax and accept that we don't control all the variables. What we do control is who we're being about it. So in the case of our two examples, we were not outer focused. I couldn't change the traffic.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. The traffic was the traffic. That's not something I was trying to control. But you see, in life, we try to control the outer stuff. What I was controlling, what you were controlling, was who we were being and the inner stuff. And when I controlled that, when I said, no, I'm getting on the plane, I just don't know how because I can't control all the variables until, see, here's the last little bit I want to say, and then we'll leave it for another session. I didn't know, obviously there was going to be some variable I was going to need to influence or control because my spacesuit needed to get on a plane. So that had to happen, right? I was like, not like Star Trek where I could beam to my daughter's birthday or something, right? So, but when I was sitting in his car, it wasn't present to me at the moment what that variable was going to be that I was going to be able to control or to influence. I didn't know what it was, but because I had centered my mind and my intention that I was getting there, my mind started looking for solutions because that's what it does. Instead of trying to wrestle with the things we can't control, believe, trust yourself, have an intention that anything is possible and be open to what it is that you desire to create in your life. And what that does is it moves your brain from finding all the evidence of why something's not going to happen, and it starts looking at why something is going to happen, right? And so you start looking for solutions. It wasn't until I got out of the car and started walking to the ticket counter that my brain clicked in. The only variable I can influence to make this happen is the conversation I'm going to have with the ticketing agent and the conversation she's going to have with the security people. That's it. That's my in. I wasn't even thinking that till I pull up to the airport, right? Because if I had determined it was impossible to get on that plane, I would not have seen that as a possibility. I would just accept I'm not going to make the party. Perception's reality.
Yes. And with that, it's like the external things really don't matter if you're coming from that place. I mean, they are. They're there. They're doing what they're doing. It doesn't mean it has to have an effect on what we're doing or where we're coming from or the outcome that we desire necessarily.
Absolutely.
But I mean, there are some external circumstances that may throw in a challenge that we need to overcome.
Sure. But then the question in that case, again, it's all perception, is did we need that thing anyway?
Sure. Right.
See,
It's
I
not
had
the
a
problem.
certain...
It's not the problem. It's how we react or respond to the problem that becomes a problem or not.
Well, it's how we respond. When we react, we never get anywhere.
Respond. Yes.
Yeah. It's how we respond to the problem. And
but you can get to a place of habitually reacting from a place of response, can't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, then it's another reaction. It's not a response because response always requires intentionality, presence, and consciousness. If it goes into unconscious habituation, you're in reaction now. Reaction is never a response. They're never the same thing. Responses become reactions.
Even if your reaction to something is to go inward and be still.
Well, if you're not, so the definition of being in a reactive state is you're no longer present and conscious and in the driver's seat of the robot, of the self. It is thinking you. Then you react. Right?
Okay. Yes.
So
yes.
like when I used to do karate before I started traveling so much and it was hard to pin down a regular karate regime, we used to go in and we used to do these routine moves over and over and over again. Now, the few times I was ever doing those moves, I hadn't built up muscle memory. I hadn't built up any reaction. I even talked about reaction time, in terms of being able to kick and punch if someone were to attack you or you're in a situation. So the first times I'm learning it, it's all responsive because I'm intentional, I'm conscious, I'm present, I'm doing something that's not normal for me. It hasn't been habituated yet. So I'm present to every kick and every little muscle tweak and how much energy this is taking and how hard and when are we done? We've been kicking for 20 minutes doing the same thing. Why do we have to, like I've got all this mind chatter. I'm very present. But then after you do it for months and months and months, you just get in and you're just reacting. I'm no longer present. I'm thinking about what I'm making for dinner that night. I'm thinking about, and I'm going through 30 minutes of routine kicks. So things that were a response can become a reaction. Everything actually that we have in our life that is a reaction for us at one point would have been a response. But then we just do it so much, it becomes unconscious and habituated. That's the only distinction between response and reaction, is a reaction is unconscious and habituated, and a response is conscious and intentional. So we're dealing with conscious and intentional for response, or unconscious and habituated for reactions. And the problem with reactions is that the circumstances aren't always the same, and yet our brain's looking to model it as the same because it wants to react, because it uses less energy, it's predictable, it knows what to do, but you don't always get the same outcome. So that's why, coming back to what you were saying earlier about when you were in meditation, as we kind of wrap it today, it's been a good long session, but there's so much meat in this. It's just like when you were talking about having that sense that you were out of body, the world, or you left your body, but you were observing it. There's like the world within and the world without, right? When we are a response, the body is not sort of thinking us and driving us. That's what it would be if it was a reaction. But when we're responding and we're bringing intentionality to it, we are present for every little nuanced step of the way. It's like women or men driving cars, guys eating a cheeseburger, driving with his hand on the phone, women's doing the mascara, whatever. Like, this is a reaction. This is habituated. So we want to be coming from a place of responding. We want to come from a place of intentionality. We want to come from the self, from within. Response requires that we come from within. Reaction is happy to be something that is coming from the world without, because it's just, reaction is only dealing with the surface stuff. It's dealing with the form and not the substance. When you're coming from response, intentionality, from within, unconditioned, you are dealing with the world within. You're not just dealing with the form, you're dealing with the substance. The substance is the I, the substance is the source, the substance is the self, who you really are. So I think we're going to have to break this up into several different micro conversations, because I could have gone down a billion little pathways off of that. But I'm glad you had that experience with the meditation.
Yeah, it was nice to experience it at that level, to be able to play with the energy, put my energy out, put my energy in, and to feel that.
You had some control around it? Like,
yes.
You could feel like it? Yeah.
Yes. Bring my awareness to having my energy outside, what that feels like, how I experience it, and what it feels like to have my energy inside, and experience that and sit with it. And I just loved it. It was just really, really lovely.
You climbed outside your spacesuit.
I did. I climbed outside my spacesuit, but I went inward. I didn't go outward of my outside of my body. I went deep inside to the me of me. Yeah. I disconnected from the bodysuit is what I would say.
So it's like for those who've seen The Matrix, right? So there's the Matrix, which is the world without, and then there's the chair that Neo sits in, where they have to plug him in so he can basically go into the Matrix. But what you did is you took the plug out of your head, you got out of the chair, and you went deeper in.
Yes. It felt like there was space between my physical body and the me of me.
Yeah.
Like I was suspended. That's what it felt like. Like I was suspended energetically.
Yeah.
Floating into nothing, just floating.
That's all. And that happened this morning.
Yes, I didn't feel my body sitting on the chair. I didn't feel the chair. I didn't feel my legs. I wasn't feeling any of that stuff. I was disconnected from it. Yeah, it's very cool. It was very
You were definitely
peaceful.
Not in your body then. If you weren't feeling the chair, you were not in your body.
No, I was deep inside. Yeah, it was a wonderful feeling. I think I'm going to practice that a little bit more, because like I said in the beginning, normally when I go to connect to source energy, I always go out and up to connect with source, is where it sits for me. But this time I went inside to tap into source, the sources within me. And that was really nice to feel that.
Now, just be careful of one thing, though. Remember, as the great sage for Star Wars fans has said, Yoda, which I think is pulled from, it is pulled from Buddhist philosophy.
Okay.
There is no try, there's only do. You don't try to do this, you just do it.
That's true.
And the distinction there is really powerful, because when you try to do something, in the word try is effort. And in meditation, there's no effort. It's actually effortlessness.
Agreed.
Right? So if you start trying to recreate that moment, like try to recreate, you won't. And you'll get attached to trying to recreate it. And then you'll get frustrated. And then it becomes even a worse experience.
Well, then tomorrow I'm going to be in that space then.
Be in it. Just drop into it. This is where the acceptance, this is where the surrender comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this very, very interesting and deep and long, but I hope it was engaging enough to keep you hanging out throughout the whole way of this episode of The Most Important Conversation. September and I will see you on our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at TMICglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.